This week, Siskel and Ebert review Wesley Snipes trying to escape his criminal life in Sugar Hill. Oilman Michael Caine corners troubleshooter Steven Seagal on deadly ground. And rodeo rider Luke Perry puts his life on the line for 8 seconds.
Put you over the top.
Okay, boy. Okay, boy.
Here it is. Will this be the first man in rodeo history ever to ride Red Rock? Look at this.
Luke Perry of 90210 stars in the true story of a rodeo cowboy who becomes one of the youngest champions in history but may not be mature enough to handle the fame in 8 seconds. It's one of 5 new movies we'll review this week on Siskel and Ebert, including the latest from Wesley Snipes and Steven Seagal. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is 8 Seconds, and this is a disarmingly simple story of an earnest young man who dreams of becoming a bull rider and of marrying a beautiful young woman who is a rodeo champion in her own right. Luke Perry plays the bull rider, Lane Frost. He's pure as gold, and here at a rodeo he approaches lovely Cynthia Geary as Kelly Kyle, who's there with her mom. He's looking for a date.
Where y'all up next?
Nacogdoches next weekend.
Well, heck, I'm up at Nacogdoches next weekend. What do you say we just grab that bite to eat there?
That sounds good, doesn't it, honey?
Sure.
All right.
Offering another lifestyle are his hometown buddies, also interested in bull riding, but they're not developed socially beyond being good young old boys.
You can't be a cowboy and a nice guy, Lane. It just don't work like that. We got an image to uphold. Drinking, loving, fighting, cowboy.
Hey, Lane.
Tough thinks he's John Wayne.
You're damn right.
Eventually, Lane and Kelly do get hitched. She's from a wealthy family, but he wants to make it on their own together.
What's that?
That is exactly what you wanted. That's a place close to your parents. You are just gonna love this. I bought this off that singer, Ray Raymond, you know.
You paid money for this?
Surprisingly, 8 Seconds, named after the amount of time a rider has to stay on top of a bull, is a true story. And the riding sequences do seem real. I can't spot the stuntman here as Lane competes in a championship.
Look how easy Lane seems to be handling it. I've never seen it. Look at him. One of those moves. He's trying to 9 in a row.
Lane and Kelly do have marital problems. It seems out of place for this story, which before this takes place, I thought it was a perfect film for young kids. You decide if it still is.
I've been with other girls, Kel. I ain't got no excuses. Ain't got nothing to do with you. You done the best you could by me, and I failed you.
We both made mistakes, Lane.
I guess that's all true about those marital problems, although the way it's played out in the film, it does seem a little corny. And yet I like the corn pone in this film because I bought the characters. They are refreshingly nice and sincere and earnest. For the most part, not all the way, 8 Seconds has a very fetching country charm to it, and I really found Luke Perry to be a winning actor.
Well, both he and Cynthia Geary are very good in this picture. She's on Northern Exposure, yeah. But, you know, this movie is a kind of a close miss for me, and I'll tell you why. It seemed as if somehow the material had never really been processed to decide what it was really about. And the part that you objected to, the marital problems, seemed to me to be what the real subject of the movie was. This would be an interesting film maybe for teenagers to see, to realize that it's not, if you get married, it doesn't mean that it's all going to be love and roses ever after, that there are problems. And that one of the problems is that a young guy like this, first of all, has trouble giving up his buddies, and secondly, has trouble dealing with all of this fame, especially since he has that relationship with his father, who was never really, truly given his approval. That stuff is all interesting, but it's not really, it's all kind of a mixture here, and the movie doesn't really come together.
I felt that it came through with that young man and the young woman. I thought that this would be a good film for kids to see. Because of the marital problems, I raised the age to what you said, you say young teenagers. Before that, I thought it could be suitable for 10-year-olds. I think it's a good little picture.
Well, they are really likable actors.
Yes.
And Luke Perry, we've heard so much about him. Here's a chance to see him really do something.
Yeah, he's good.
And he really can do something. Okay, next movie. And our next movie is You So Crazy, a comedy concert film featuring Martin Lawrence, who also stars in the Fox network sitcom Martin. His TV persona is fairly middle of the road, but as a stand-up comic, Lawrence is in the raunchy tradition of Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and uses four-letter words as punctuation marks. In fact, he throws them out almost like popcorn.
Well, black people kill me, though, in jail, right? The ones that are locked up. Sending pictures home like jail is a nice place to be. Always posing, too, talking about.
Although Bill Cosby is on record as not approving of the deaf comedy jams that Lawrence hosts on MTV, actually, in a way, Lawrence uses Cosby-style material, basing a lot of his humor on childhood memories and everyday experiences.
They got in some areas, though, some cities where they give you a free ride home if you're drinking. And see, white people thought about that. Don't drink and drive on the holidays. Call us and we'll get you home. See, that's good. That's a beautiful idea. See, because that's true. Don't drink and drive. Drunks use that number, too. They call it. Dally. Hello? I'm drunk, then. Baby. I need to get to 445 Canyon Road. White person come pick him up, take him to 445 Canyon Road, and be another party. Thank you.
You So Crazy will, of course, be compared to the two classic modern films of stand-up comedy, Richard Pryor Live on the Sunset Strip and Eddie Murphy's Raw. And in a three-way contest, Richard Pryor still comes out in front. There seems to be more at risk in his material, and it seems to come from deeper inside. But Lawrence is definitely playing in the same league. He's quick, smart, and hard-edged, and I like the way his whole body seems to change when he switches characters. This movie is rated NC-17, by the way. It's not for those under 17.
Well, I didn't care for it that much, and I was going to use that old gag. I know Richard Pryor's Live in Concert, and this is no Richard Pryor's Live in Concert. Richard Pryor was explosively funny with this material, self-critical, using himself, sacrificing himself a little bit more than Martin Lawrence. The way he opens up the film with a whole bunch of shots at whites seemed to be the least interesting part of the humor. It seemed to be like he had to say that to prove to the black audience that he's black and proud in some way, and I didn't think that was worthy of his encounter.
That's boring, and I'll tell you something else that is boring too, and that is the obsessive use of four-letter words. And what that tells me, you know, I've heard these words before. I use these words. What it tells me is he doesn't have faith in his material. You know, if you really are telling a story that's funny, and if you're telling it in a funny way, you don't have to have a four-letter word every third word in order to say it.
He also uses body part stuff to the extreme. In other words, he's using the same thing. He'll do a gesture on female anatomy and male anatomy once, twice, but he'll keep using it, it because he doesn't have a place to go.
Nevertheless, I do recommend the film. I think he is talented, and I think he's probably going to get better.
I don't think that's going to be too hard for him because I don't think he did a good job this time. When we come back, Wesley Snipes is a young Harlem crime boss who wants out. Sugar Hill is next.
It can work, and we think it's good for everybody.
Well, you think? Well, I think it's going to be conflict.
Something happened between you and me, and I can't stop thinking about it.
I don't even know you, boy. You crazy?
I know you don't know who I am, and you're right. You might not even like who I am. But, Melissa, you gotta believe me. Everything in my life is about to change.
That's Wesley Snipes, a young Harlem gang lord who wants to go straight with a new love in his life in the new urban crime drama called Sugar Hill. His desire to break free puts him in conflict with his drug-dealing partner, his older brother, played by Michael Wright.
Ray, I'm not scared, man. I just see something you don't. That's it. Why don't you just cut me loose then, man? That's what I've been trying to tell you, Ray. I don't want to do this anymore.
Even more corny is a scene with an old mafia boss where Snipes also says he wants out. I'm getting tired of this story, which was also beaten to death in Carlito's Way with Al Pacino, the young guy who wants to go straight.
It's the end of the road for me, Gus. That's it. I'm turning everything over to Ray. You can deal with him from now on. He'll call you.
Here's another standard scene in this sort of story, the good girl who wants to take the gangster away from all of this violence.
I would love to just go to the airport and hop on the first plane going anywhere. Any place to do, you know.
Aside from some scenes describing Harlem, you have seen this movie before, and frankly, even though I didn't care for Carlito's Way, I have to admit it was a lot more stylish than this story. Wesley Snipes, a big talent, I think is foundering now with some of his big money career choices, Rising Sun, Demolition Man, and now Sugar Hill. I don't think there's a memorable moment in any of them.
Ooh-wee, I really disagree with you about this, Gene. I want to tell you that this movie captured me from beginning to end. I think it's a very, very important film, and it is not. It is not a recycling of the cliches that you say it is. It starts out, first of all, let's talk about the visual look of the film. This movie made me think very much of The Godfather and its palette from beginning to end. Then talk about the dialogue. The dialogue, you know what this dialogue reminded me of? Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill. This is the story of a family. This is a story of a family destroyed by drugs, and the complexity of Wesley Snipes' relationship with his father, played by Clarence Williams in the film, and the complexity of his relationship with Abe Vigoda, the old gangster who was the same man who killed his father, and now he's dealing with the son.
Let's go to the woman, the good girl who wants to free him from this. You think she's a stock character?
She doesn't want to free him. She wants to get rid of him. She doesn't want him in her life because she knows he's trouble. And look what happens to her. And then she comes around, as women do, and as men do.
Boy, you're comparing this to The Godfather and Eugene O'Neill.
How about the look? You can't deny it. It looks like The Godfather. Does it look like The Godfather?
It's dark.
Yeah, and is it beautiful? Is it beautifully photographed?
The opening images are very pretty. I was disappointed as the story played out because of the story.
Pretty is an insult. What about the dialogue? This dialogue is really written with an ear.
I didn't think it was anything special.
Okay, well, we disagree. When we come back, we'll look at Steven Seagal's directing debut, On Deadly Ground. That's next.
I didn't want to resort to violence. I don't have a choice.
Well, let's see, that's natives 8 and oil workers 0. Anybody else want to play with Cupcake?
Steven Seagal gets in a barroom brawl in On Deadly Ground, an action thriller which he also directed in. This is a movie that is limited to two basic qualities. It's violent and it's sanctimonious. So at the end, after Seagal kills about 30 people and blows up the largest oil refinery in the world, what happens? Well, he's invited to speak to the Alaska State Legislature, and he talks about ecology. Now, I'm not sure, but I think blowing up refineries did not make you that popular in Alaska. The movie co-stars Michael Caine, almost unrecognizable in a black hairstyle, as an evil oil billionaire whose ambition is to open the refinery before a deadline which would return control of the oil field to the Eskimos.
I think I understand now why you're using the substandard preventers. If you wait for the next shipment, you'll never make the deadline.
I gotta say, I'm a little ashamed of you.
I'd just like to ask you something. How much is enough?
Another co-star is Joan Chin as the daughter of a noble Eskimo chief who's the target of Caine's henchmen.
But Raven was worried that man would destroy everything he had made to inhabit the earth. So he formed Bear, to be feared by man, and to protect the land.
Caine hires a team of professional hitmen led by John C. McGinley to kill Seagal. Now, if you like to see lots of stuff blowed up real good, this would be a movie for you, but it doesn't pay to devote close attention to the plot of On Deadly Ground. Then there's Seagal's shameless final speech after the murders and the explosions and the fireballs, when he keeps a straight face while informing the grateful Alaskans that the oil industry has suppressed carburetors which would give you 100 miles to a gallon of gas, making the state's #1 industry unnecessary.
I was sort of struck by the fact that the explosions, for all of their number, weren't very exciting. No. It looked kind of dirty and low rent as a big action picture. I didn't think that the fight sequences were anything special.
No.
I will say this, that the speech at the end, as sanctimonious as it is more interesting than the actual fighting and the blowing up.
Well, but it's absurd.
It is absurd that he's saying it.
I mean, basically, he's telling people they should put sails on their cars.
Okay. Here's one thing that happened to me that was very funny. I'm sitting watching the picture. A guy comes across the aisle to me. He says, this is halfway through the picture. He says, do you think I would enjoy do you think I would enjoy seeing The Getaway more than this? I said, yes. And he leaves the theater.
Goes to the next. Okay, when we come back, the epic story of a great fortune built on a crime in the hills of Italy. Fiorile is next.
Our next film from Italy, called Fiorile, comes with a great pedigree, the latest effort of the much-praised Italian filmmakers, the Taviani brothers. Padre Padrone and The Night of the Shooting Stars are their best-known efforts. I liked Fiorile, too, the story of an ancient curse that is passed down an Italian family tree for 200 years. Beginning in the 1790s in Tuscany, when a French soldier falls for a beautiful Italian peasant woman and loses a chest of gold he was supposed to be guarding. What no one knows is that the gold has been stolen by the young woman's brother.
La legge militare dice: se entro domattina all'alba la casa non sarà riconsegnata, lui morirà fucilato.
The money is never recovered. The soldier is put to death. A love affair is aborted, and the action switches to 1903 as the descendants of the thief's family have become now very rich and now throw lavish parties in an attempt to win a political campaign.
Gli ho promesso la cena medicea. Ora, come Lorenzo, come i medici, io questa sera mangerò senza posate, con le mani, e invito voi a fare altrettanto.
We switch now to the 1940s as we meet another member of the Benedetti family, aware of the family curse that's being passed down through the generations.
Lui è Jean. Te ne ho parlato. Il giovane soldato francese amato da Fiorile. Jean è la parte buona del mio sangue.
I got involved in this story in two ways. First, with these human characters, but also with the land on which they reside. I always fall for stories about a piece of land bears witness to human machinations over generations. I like that with houses too, like in Howard's End. And even though this film is not that good, I also like it with the Tuscan hills of Fiorile. Watching it is like diving into a fine historical novel.
Well, you spent a lot of time talking about the land, and I think you kind of avoided the weakness of the film, which is the characters. None of these characters are very interesting, nor are the actors who play them. In fact, it seemed to me that the entire movie had a curiously low energy level, and that it was just a long, meandering story that didn't really have a point, and it didn't really have a payoff.
Oh, I thought that the point was the father explaining to his children what's going on with this family, and I did believe that the curse was alive, and this was the kind of thing that could be passed down in a small town.
But did the film really interest you very much,
Absolutely.
or excite you very much?
It interested me all the way through. I like that generational kind of story, and I bought it.
For me, this is the kind of story where once you get the pattern, what you do in the first 25 minutes, you realize you're going to have to see it 4 more times, and then the movie will be over.
But Roger, you don't know what is going to happen in each generation. You didn't know that there was going to be a political campaign in 1903 when they're in 1790s. There's no way you could possibly know
I kind of guessed that there might be a war in the 40s, though.
Well, very good, Roger.
Right.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
You went to school,
yes,
grammar school, I guess.
Yes, and I also went to film school. When we come back, the video pick of the week starring Catherine Deneuve in A Story from Vietnam.
I tried to stop.
I just kept going back.
I can't control myself.
What's harder to resist than Orville Redenbacher's buttered popcorn? New Redenbutters. More buttery taste than you can imagine, drizzling over every square inch of Orville's butterfly kernels.
I love it.
In 3 irresistible flavors. Movie theater butter, urban garlic butter, and zesty butter. New Redenbutters.
That's cool.
Siskel and Ebert's Video Pick of the Week, brought to you by Orville Redenbacher, the first and last name in popcorn.
Now it's time for the Video Pick of the Week, and my pick this week is a perfect example of the kind of movie that home video was made for. When Indochine was released theatrically last year, I voted thumbs down. I didn't think it was good enough for a trip to the theater. But home video allows you to appreciate some of the film's genuine qualities. Indochine is a luxurious and sensual epic about the French occupation of Vietnam with a haunting sense of time and place, and it's centered on a Catherine Deneuve performance that won an Academy Award nomination. Deneuve plays a French woman who single-handedly runs a rubber plantation while maintaining a facade of chic that would be impressive even in Paris.
De la bûche comme en France, ça il fallait le faire. C'est un vrai Noël.
Deneuve adopts a Vietnamese girl, and then as the revolution against the French begins to grow, she loses the daughter to ideology.
Emmène-le. Ton Indochine n'existe plus. Elle est morte.
Indochine was considered a sort of French Gone with the Wind, but it lacks the drama of that film, and it leads up to a curious conclusion, a meeting that never quite takes place. Still, just to look at this film is a pleasure, and that's what home video allows you to do, and Deneuve, whose character spans some 30 years, gives an impressive performance, one that deserved her Oscar nomination. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. We had a split decision on 8 Seconds. Gene liked the portrait of a rodeo cowboy too young to handle fame, but I thought the story was sort of sad and disconnected. We both admired Luke Perry's performance. Another split vote for comedian Martin Lawrence in his stand-up comedy concert, You So Crazy. I feel he's got high energy and a quick mind and an ability to transform himself into lots of different characters. Gene thinks Lawrence still needs to polish his act. The movie opens in New York in 2 weeks. We split again on Sugar Hill with Wesley Snipes as a drug crime boss who sickens of his business and wants out. I was particularly impressed by the depth of the writing by Barry Michael Cooper, both in the way the characters were drawn and in the clarity and power of the dialogue. Gene felt it was a tired story and he'd seen it often before. 2 big thumbs down, way down, for Steven Seagal's On Deadly Ground, a movie so confused it seems to have been written not just by a committee, but by 2 committees that weren't on speaking terms. Finally, a split decision on Fiorile by the Taviani brothers. Gene admired the story of a family followed by a curse down through the generations. I thought the movie was too low-key and the performances didn't make me care about the characters. So the one that I really feel strongly about is Sugar Hill. I think that movie is an important film that people should make a point of seeing.
Yeah, and I can't agree with you. And for younger audiences, I would say 8 Seconds. That's this week. Next time, we'll be back with Angie, starring Gina Davis as a single woman whose pregnancy scandalizes her Brooklyn neighbors. And Greedy with Michael J. Fox trying to latch on to Kirk Douglas's vast fortunes.
I had no idea just how sick you guys were. Come spend a day with us.
That's next week. And until then, the balcony is closed.